Welcome to Draft Sickos, the show where we cover everybody from the biggest stars to the deepest sleepers. I am Maxwell Baumbach, joined at this time by the real star of the show, Stephen Gillespie. Stephen, how are you doing today?
Maxwell, I'm doing awesome, dude. It's the time of year where I'm glad that college basketball is back because I feel like we can just really nitpick guys that we haven't seen play so far this draft cycle, and we're kind of evaluating their past performance, projecting how they're going to do this year, and then we still got international play. There's just a really big inhale before I think we're about to hit a big sprint in terms of scouting. But how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's been like a nice low key weekend. Like I kind
Mhm.
of strategically planned this ahead. Like I took a week off of the gym, took a week off everything to just like sleep in and get recharged and get ready. And I'm so with you, man. Like I'm tired of the wait and see, and I'm tired of the like, all right, well, watch this guy's film this summer, and now we're just kind of waiting and waiting. Like I am more than ready for the games to get here. But how's your weekend? How's last week been for you?
Oh man, just today we did my oldest two. I'm looking for stuff to do with them, and during the week with what I do for a living is kind of hard.
Mhm.
So I really try to take advantage of the weekend. So we went to a an actual Pokemon League that takes place here in our town, and the woman that hosts it, she's a real sweetheart, and she is no kidding like a Pokemon professor. There are people that get certified through like an actual Pokemon League. They have different titles. They're able to host tournaments, like have gym leaders and all that kind of stuff. So stuff that I would have went bananas for,
Mhm.
whenever I was their age. And it was cool just to kind of go. They got to build their own decks, and they got a bunch of free stuff. Like it is just
That's
like the
great.
ultimate. There's like the ultimate cool like dad experience where I just got to take them out and they got to go have fun for a few hours. But it was a good time, man. I'm looking forward to doing that with them during the weekends. How about you, man?
That's awesome. I like I said, like I've I've been doing nothing. I was like a little
Just
sick this.
nothing at all, huh?
No, we stayed home, we took it easy. I was, like, super sick or, like, at the midpoint of the week, so I'm just, like, glad to be feeling better. My face is finally clearing out. We got humidifiers running. We're doing everything we can to,
Mhm.
feel better over here, beat the allergies, beat the little flu bug kinda thing that we had, so I'm just glad to be podcasting and talking ball and ready for college basketball to get here. So this is gonna be the last episode of the prospect preview series. It's done
Yeah,
after this, and we're gonna kind of go into our normal format after this. So after this, we're gonna go to weekend winners. So in the future, we're gonna kind of cover like, hey, here's what just happened this past week here. The guys that won the week across the draft landscape. We'll do a feature focus talking about the guys that we've been spending a lot of time on for our written work, and then we'll do the sicko stuff too. We got the
of course.
sicko session. We'll each got to pick a guy further down the board that maybe in the last week or so caught our eye that we want to talk about. And we've got some of that on this episode too. We kind of each picked
Mhm.
a guy at the end, and you got me doing some film work on a guy I'd been kind of sleeping on a little bit too much, and hope I did the same for you. So let's get into it. The first player we're going to cover tonight is Milo Suzan from Oklahoma, a player I had the chance to interview and write a feature about. I've done a lot on Uzan. I'm pretty high on him, so I want to get your opinion first and just see kind of where we differ. Get that kind of somebody else's perspective on it. Where are you at with Milo Suzan?
Yeah, so first off, just want to point out some numbers for him real quick.
Mhm.
About 8 points per game, 3 assists, 3 boards, shot 47, 41, 77. His shooting numbers look pretty outstanding, Maxwell. 94th percentile in the catch and shoot, 74th in spot ups overall. Obviously very good shooter. I like that he can finish in the paint. I like his build a lot. I think that he's going to be one of these guys that even though he's undersized, I think that he can perform well. I think that he's going to be durable. I like his passing ability a lot, man. Love his just overall court awareness. I feel like he's going to be one of these guys, and it's important for these guards that are going through college, coming into the NBA, that they can play with the ball in their hands, that they can organize and orchestrate the offense, but they can play off of other people as well. And at Oklahoma, Milos is going to be asked to do that again this year with some of the people that they brought in. 65th percentile in defending the pick and roll ball handler. So if you're looking for some signs of hope that he is going to be able to hold his own on the defensive end, I think that he is more than capable of doing that. I'm really looking to see the work that he put in this offseason kind of come into fruition. A rebounding rate, though, Maxwell, we talk about it all the time, even with guards, right? Like rebounding rate is typically a good indicator of how players translate up in terms of how they will produce in the NBA. He's pretty low from his last season. Hopefully, that's kind of like a role thing and not so much a what he is capable of, so to speak. That being said, those couple little things that I mentioned on the defensive side of the ball, the rebounding rate, I have him 19th on my board, man.
Mhm.
I do have questions though. I'll pose one to you. How do we feel about his athleticism, his passing, and his shooting? All three of those things
Yeah.
translating up because that's going to be kind of the crux of where he's valued at among NBA front offices.
For sure, and I think, like, I think that's a great question too, because, like, specifically, those are the things that we've been harping on with a lot of these guards lately, right? Like,
Yep.
those are 3 things that are really important. I think he's, like, a solid athlete. I don't think he's a great athlete, and, like, I think he's a little limited vertically, comparing him to, like, super high-end guards. I think that's gonna be one of the things that
Yeah.
might hurt his outcome a little bit. But one thing I've been working on a lot recently is just, like, data charts and data projects and things like that. And I think that one thing that stands out about him is that he pressures the rim a ton. Like,
Yeah.
comparing his rates of, like, his percentage of shots at the rim compared to, like, other guards, like, it's a lot. Like, he's up there with, like, really athletic guards. Like, he's in the same vicinity as guys like DeJounte Murray, Jaden Ivey, like Gary Payton II, as far as, like, what percentage of his shots are coming at the rim in the half court.
Yep.
I think he has a lot of ways to compensate for it, right? Like, I think he's good with both hands at the rim. I think he has really soft touch, and I think his setups just to get there are really great. Like, he's so good at manipulating ball screens, and, whether it's reusing a screen or rejecting a screen or just finding different ways to keep defenders off balance and get where he wants. And I do think he's got enough slither and shiftiness to kind of get where he wants. And he's not super weak. Like, he's not a guy that, like,
No.
he's under 200 pounds, but he doesn't get, like, totally knocked off his spot or have to pick up his dribble when he gets bumped. So I I worry about the athleticism to a point, but I don't think it's like a deal breaker with him, because I think he's good enough at the things to compensate for it that I think he's going to be fine. The shooting is interesting, right? Because he shot like 40% from three. So if you're just hearing that percentage, it's like, oh, great, we're in business. Um, the big issue with that was the volume was really low. Like, he took
Yeah.
4.7 per 100 possessions. So again, just kind of data wise to give a comparison for that. Like, that's like what like some of these guys did end up shooting, but that's like around like what DeJounte Murray, Io DeSunmu, D'Anthony Melton, like Gary Payton II, like guys that kind of had questions about their shot. Like, that's how many that those are the guys who were in that vicinity when they were in
Mhm.
college. So he's got to take it more aggressively, and he did take more of them throughout the year. And that was something that I asked him about specifically. Was it seemed like the volume increased late in the year, and it was just a matter of him kind of adjusting to more of an off-ball role next to Grant Sherfield and knowing like, hey, I've got to take more of these. I think we will see a volume uptick, and I do think he can shoot it off the catch. And even if a guy's volume numbers are low, something I've started to notice in my research a lot is if you do shoot well off the catch, it's generally a good sign, even if like
Yeah.
the volume isn't crazy. So I'd like to see him add more to his pull-up game, because I think again that would help him with getting to his spots. But I think that stuff is there. The passing stuff I think is awesome. So
Yeah.
I really like the setup. I think the defense is like fine. Like, I don't think the defense is like notable one way or another with him. I think it's fine. But yeah, I think the athleticism is a bit of a concern, but I do think the shooting and like the finishing and playmaking stuff will be enough to get him over the hump.
Yeah, obviously, I'm a believer in that too, man. Like I
Mhm.
said, I got him in the top 20 coming in. Big fan of just like his spatial awareness on the offensive side of the ball. Knows where his teammates are, where they're trying to get to. Very familiar with where they are comfortable getting the ball. And I would like to see him kind of dominate. More pick and roll actions. And again, with Oklahoma having they're bringing in JV McCollum to
Yeah.
play alongside of him as well. I think that's going to open the floor up for him a lot to operate as a ball handler and kind of vice versa. So being
Mhm.
able, I think that this is a perfect opportunity for him to be able to show what all guards eventually have to do in the NBA right now, Maxwell, is they got to play on and off the ball kind of equally. They got to have that well balanced attack. And I think that we're going to get the perfect chance to see what he looks like in that type of a system this year at Oklahoma.
I agree. I think that's like a really exciting team. And I'm really interested to see what that backcourt looks like. Let's get to our next guy here. It's Deron Holmes at Dayton, 6'10", 225. He was the guy who tested the waters last year, ended up going back to school. A guy that I feel like I go back and forth on a lot. Like, I feel like there are
Yeah.
days where like I really buy Deron Holmes and like I just love what he's bringing to the table, and then other days where I'm like, I don't know what the sell here is. Like, I it's tough for me, and I hate saying this
Yeah.
because when I watched him in person, so I saw him in person last year, but it was against a Wyoming team that was an injured Wyoming team, and Wyoming was bad last year. So he was playing guys
Little
that
Hunter
had like
Maldonado. Yeah.
yeah. So like the guys that were guarding him had like my level of foot speed. So it's one of those games where
Oh, wow.
he scored like 20, but it's like, well, yeah, of course he scored 20. So it was like the worst game I could have seen to see him in person to get an evaluation on him. But yeah, interesting player. He's gonna be a junior at Dayton next season. Um it feels to me like there is a chance that he just kind of quietly tears it up this year because I feel like there are guys sometimes where there's like all these big expectations for them coming to their sophomore season. It doesn't happen. And then like that doesn't mean it's over. Like Ochai
Yeah.
was like a prime example, where like every year was like, all right, Ochai, like here we go, here we go. And it didn't happen. And then all of a sudden it's like a senior, he exploded. With Deron Holmes at 6'10", really good mobility. I think that's like the big selling point with him is that he feels like he could be a guy in time as his frame fills out that you can throw on the court defensively in the playoffs and nobody's going to be able to like play him off of the court because of how well he's able to move. Um, he is a plus passer, I would say, for his position, but it feels like his passing stagnated a little bit last season. Like there wasn't like many new wrinkles, I guess I would say, to
Yeah.
his game. They post him up a lot. I had a hard time evaluating Dayton as a whole last year because like they didn't have a real point guard most of the year.
Mm.
So like they post him up a lot. Obviously, it's not going to be his NBA role, but I also worry like, is that what you want to do, or like would you rather be doing roles, or is this just like the system that you're in? I think that would be interesting to find out. But because when he is a role man, like he's really efficient at it. He's really good. And I think that is kind of going to get the best out of him. Would like to see him be a little bit more physical on a consistent basis on those screens. Um, I do think he's a really cerebral player, though. Like in that game I
Yeah.
mentioned that I saw him in person, like he hit a three, and then like the next time he caught the ball in the perimeter, like the defender was like, "Oh, I've got to close out hard now," and he just pump faked him, and he didn't get a basket, but he drew a foul off of it. It's like that's like the things you want to see is like immediate recognition, taking advantage, and doing little things. Took a couple more threes last year, less than one a game, 31%. Improved his free throw percentage quite a bit, got to the line a lot. It sounds like people are, from what I've heard, are pretty bullish on how the shot looks this year. I think that could be a big swing factor in his game, kind of fully modernize that offense a little bit. Um, my concern with him is just what he does defensively around the
Yeah.
basket. I think he's pretty weak for a big man, and like guys shot around 52% around the rim against him. And this is going to sound very reductive and very obvious. But like the big trend I've noticed in my data work among bigs is that the bigs that stick are really good at scoring around the basket and really good at stopping other guys from scoring around the basket. Where like the bigs that he's closer to are more like 4 or 5 kind of guys. A lot of, and there are exceptions, right? Because like around the rim defensive numbers, they're not perfect, but it's a lot more like John Collins, Isaiah Stewart, Thomas Bryant, Obi Toppin, Laurie Markkinen kind of guys. So it's like,
Yeah.
well, if you don't have that kind of jump shot or that kind of offensive game, and like John Collins is a much different player in college than he's become in the pros, but I don't love that. And it's obvious on the film too, just because like he gets moved pretty easily. Guys get through his chest. And he's gonna have to do a lot more on the glass. Like I don't think he's a great rebounder. And last
Mm.
year he had Chumani Kamara to compensate for that a lot. Like he had a 6'8" dude that had an NBA ready body that was 22 years old who could fly in and clean up for him. This year he's got to do that on his own. So I'm pretty torn on Deron Holmes. Like some days I like him early second. Some days I'm like, do I need to draft this guy? So where are you at with Deron Holmes?
Well, I'll start with saying that he's 26th on my board.
Okay.
I'm a believer in the things that he's really good at. Well, I'll go ahead and say this. First off, you're talking about a guy who had 18 points per game, 8 rebounds, almost 2 assists, almost 2 blocks, and
Mhm.
almost 1 steal. 78th percentile in both post ups and in cutting, right? So not we're not just talking about a guy who likes to set up camp around the basket, a guy who can make moves off of both setting a screen and just flashing to the basket. Like very instinctive, very intuitive mover away from the ball for his position. Um, to be honest, other than the 3-point shot, I don't know what else he can really add that we haven't already seen from him. And
Mhm.
that can cause a little bit of stagnation in your draft stock too, right? I mean, when we're talking about guys coming back who tested the waters, we want to see them add something. I mean, we kind of had a similar conversation to think about TJD last year, right? Where it felt like, we've already seen TJD. He keeps coming in. He's going back. What else can he do? If Tumani can kind of have like that similar, uptick at least in, let's say, facilitating, passing the ball around a
Mhm.
little bit, not nothing crazy. You don't got to average like 6 or 7 assists as the center, but talking about like 3.5 assists, 4 assists, something like that for his position. Now we're talking about a completely different player, right? And again, talking about how cerebral Maxwell, like you said, that he is away from the ball and just being able to finish with consistency. I mean, this guy had 89
Really good
dunks on the year
finisher,
last
yeah.
season, right? So
Mhm.
great finisher, good athleticism. 3-point shot kind of, I hope that it is becoming bullish because like you mentioned, it was under 31%. Um, Defensively, I'm kind of with you though. And this is where I think kind of the crux of his draft stock is going to kind of swing on is he an anchor defensively? And if not, how kind of tricky of a system does he have to kind of be involved with on the defensive end? Because he's a really good weak side rim protector, but I don't know if he's a rim deterrent. And
Mhm.
if that's kind of the lane that you're living in, he's 6'10, which is, decent size, but it's nothing that's like earth shattering either. So if you're kind of 6'10, sub 230, sub 235, somewhere in that neighborhood, you're not really a great shooter. You're a pretty decent vertical athlete, but you're not really a rim protector. The fit can be a little bit tricky, right? So that's why I kind of have him at the tail end of my first round because I do like him. And I do think that he can contribute a lot of good things. But the big thing that I'm going to be paying to in particular is the improvements that he makes on the defensive side of the ball instead of the offensive end.
That's a good point. I Yeah, I think maybe that TJD kinda, like, comparison is an interesting one because sometimes it can just be, like, not necessarily adding something new, but just getting, like, really good at stuff you can already do. Like, with TJD too, is like the
Yeah.
junior year, like, block total, right? Where it was like, "Oh, man, okay, like, he's really sending shots away." Like, it could be something as simple as that for Deron Holmes that kinda boosts his stock. Um, Up next, you've got Kobe Johnson, from USC. Shout out
I love
to
Kobe. Can I just say that for
Yeah,
I'm
I think we
before we
both
even just
do.
get going, I love Kobe. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Shout out to Rowan Cat on our site who wrote a really great piece on him. Kobe Johnson to me is like one of these guys where I get a little nervous. Like, am I falling for this guy too much? But you love him, so I'm gonna kind of let you take the lead and I'll kind of give my thoughts on him as well.
Is it the idea of him? Because it's just like
It could be.
he just seems like a hooper's hooper, man. Like he
Hmm.
he moves way better than you would think that he does based on how he looks. Like I'm not caught doesn't no shots at David Roddy. Like obviously he's doing good for
Yeah,
himself. He's
yeah.
made it to the NBA and he's good, but he doesn't look like David Roddy. You know what I mean? Like, but he's not like cut up either. So like when you look at him, especially like the way that he's like physically built, you don't expect him to move the way that he does, but he still does, and it's just interesting to see. He's a great finisher, incredibly strong, like isn't afraid of contact, rated in the 83rd percentile in cutting, 71st percentile in the catch and shoot. Let's talk about like that diversity and skill set on the offensive end. On top of that,
Hmm.
he also has like some good feel with the ball in his hand too, which is very fun to see. Um, 65th percentile at the rim too. So I love his defensive instincts. I wouldn't necessarily classify him as like a defensive playmaker, but he plays good fundamental defense. And on top of that fundamental solid defense, he still had a pretty good steals rate as well, which typically translates up. I love his offensive playmaking, man, but I got a question for you, Maxwell. Do you think that
Hmm.
the additions of like Bronny and Isaiah Collier kind of mute some of the best parts of his game this year?
I think that's a fair question because that's my concern with him too, right? Is like I hate the like there's only one ball kind of argument, but like I think from a prospect standpoint, it can be a real issue. Like it's really hard for guys to stand out when you only have the ball so much. I think what
Yeah.
I love about Kobe so much is I do think he has the like ideal complementary skill set for like a two
Yep.
slash three wing. Right, he's got some meat on his bones. He's not really slight. Like he's not going to get pushed around. I love the defense. Like his ground coverage for a player his size is fantastic. His balance is excellent. The motor runs really hot. Like he's just one of those guys where he can really be all over the place. And like you said, there's like a real fundamental base to it, which like
Yeah.
I think a lot of times you see a steal rate like that, and you're like, oh, is this guy just kind of like running all over the place? And he's not. Like when he guards the
Yeah.
ball, he's just really quick with his hands. And he's got some ups to him, like he can block shots at times. Like I love what he does on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, yeah, like I think he's a really smart player. Like you mentioned, the cutting, really good finisher. The
Yep.
shot's a little tricky just because like the volume is low, but he shot 36% from three last year, which is a big increase.
Yep.
84% free throw shooter. Maybe I'm just being a little too like simplified with it. And granted, these guys had a much bigger offensive role, right? So it's not apples to apples. But guys like Ayo Dosunmu and like J Dub were both guys that like, is he able to shoot it? Whatever. And like the Io's minutes have been kind of cut this year, so maybe he's not the best example, but like they they made their catch and shoot threes and they finished really well. And like the volume wasn't there, but it's like if you are just good at those catch and shoot shots, it can do wonders for you. And like all the other
Yep.
connective stuff is there. I like Kobe Johnson's handle. I like how he sees the game on the go. He's got some like kind of live dribble stuff to him. He's like a sneaky good offensive rebounder for his position as well. Yeah, I just love what he can do in a role. I think the phrase like connector and like connective player, like it's thrown around a little too much, but I think that's like truly
Yeah.
what Kobe
I would
Johnson
say
is.
so.
Like if other guys start the domino and get the defense rotating, get the defense moving, like he knows how to prey on that. Whether it's just taking the shot, attacking, cutting, driving and going, like whatever it is, he knows how to keep that advantage alive. And I think that's such a great skill set. But I think there's something to what you're saying. I think with Boogie Ellis is back. Boogie Ellis was awesome last season. He scored like 19 points a game. Like he's going to be there. He's going to need to eat. Isaiah Collier is going to want to eat. When Bronny gets in the lineup, they're going to want to give him some stuff too. Like it might be a little tough for him to get like the counting numbers and the volume up on his threes and some of the things that he probably needs to do to get that kind of first round buzz. But I really like him a lot, and he's from a pro bloodline too. Like his brother Jalen
Yeah.
Johnson is having quite the year, so that's always a nice thing to see too. I think there
Don't
is a
mean to
question.
brag, but I had Jalen ninth on my board. I was
Oh man,
always
I
afraid to
was a
admit
little
it until this
skeptical,
year, but
and like, yeah, he's just one of those guys I think now where it's like if you're that big and like the feel is what it is, and you play defense, like it's probably not going to fail. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a pretty high floor on those kind of guys we're learning. So, yeah. Oh man, we had somebody in the chat saying I had to guard Kobe Johnson in high school. That's brutal.
yeah, I
That's tough.
apologize for you
That's a
having
tough
to do that, but
assignment.
it's a cool story though,
Yeah.
like, I never had to guard him, thank
No,
goodness,
I
but,
didn't have to, thankfully. Yeah, but
where's he at on your board, can I ask?
yeah, I think I had him like early second. I think I had him around like 38. But like, I've got a lot of these
Why do you
returners.
hate him?
I've got a lot of these returners kind of low. Like I'm gonna kind of let the freshmen fail this year. That sounds
Okay,
cruel, but I'm giving a lot of the freshmen an opportunity to start high and go from there. I I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. I've never been less married to my board to start the year than this year, and
oof,
it's tricky because like I feel
yeah,
like I'm a much better evaluator than I was a year ago, but this year it feels like there are so many more guys in that Julian Phillips type of tier where it was like,
mm,
oh, I kind of like this guy. I'm not
he's
quite
got
sure it's
some
going to work
tools,
out.
yeah,
Maybe it doesn't work out right away. Maybe he's really good. Maybe he's not good. Like, I feel like I have way more players like that in the freshman class than guys last year. It was like Anthony Black, where we had a conversation on the pod last year before the season started, where I was like, yeah, Anthony Black could have a bad season and I'm taking him in the first round. Like this kind of skill set and athleticism, it's just
yeah,
like, yeah, I'm taking him in the first. Like it is what it is. This kind of player doesn't fail. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of those guys this year. And even Kaysen was a guy, right? Where it was like, yeah, this guy's going to be good. It's just a matter of like
he's
how
just
good.
boring, yeah,
Yeah. Like, Rucker got so mad at us
yes,
for
he did.
saying the Kaysen Wallace was boring. And like, but we loved him. Like, Kaysen is a lot of guy. But,
Albert called him a pair
um,
of scissors.
yeah, yeah. Like it's I feel like this year there's just not a lot of those guys. So I'm gonna kind of let some of them start high. And and we'll shake it out. And I think the returners are going to get a much more of a bump from me than the freshmen if this class is how some of the skeptics say. With a guy like Kobe, I think one of the reasons I'm like 38 and not like 18 is just my fear of that kind of player, right? Where it's like if you're
Yeah.
good in this role at the college level, like does that always scale up well, right? Like Matthew Mayer when he had that 1 year at Baylor, and everyone was like, Matthew Mayer, you're the one the national title, and people
He
were like,
also had
he
a
could go in the
mullet.
first round, and like he ended up going back to school and kind of proved he wasn't that guy. I think there is real reason to be concerned about guys that like play a very complimentary role in college and wondering if that can scale up or not.
I think that's totally fair, and I think what would be a fun exercise, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about this the other day is like, and this is very drastic approach, but I think it would be fun. It's like,
Mhm.
should we do like a your life is on the line board? Like you have to not pick just like
Mhm.
on what's the probability
Potential,
factor
yeah.
that this dude could hit, everything that he needs to be his
Mhm.
best version of himself. Like, what would how different would your board be if like if
Yeah.
your job security was at
Yeah,
risk,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so to speak, I think that would be a fun exercise, man.
And I think that's something that I have been thinking about a lot too lately because it's like, well, at this point in the year, I'm saying I would gamble on this guy, but I'm not sure if this is somebody I'd gamble on in 3 months. But right now, it's like I'm kind of into the upside of this guy over Kobe Johnson. But
Yeah.
maybe I'm being too hard on Kobe. We're gonna do a break. We're gonna talk about a couple other guys after the break. A real interesting mix, like of guys that
Yeah.
have been around the block for a while, guys that we're anticipating big leaps from, some mid-major guy in here. It's a real fun group of three guys coming up. So stay tuned. We will be right back on the other side of the break. All right, let's lead off with Kevin McCullough, who is 6'7", around 212. He is going to be at Kansas this season for the second year in a row. And he is an interesting player. I think I am quite low on him
Ooh.
compared to a lot of people within our crew. So I'm going to let you lead off with Kevin McCullough and give me the sales pitch before I can kind of rain on the parade a little bit.
Well, I have him 32nd on my board, so thank you
Okay.
for the instilling a lot of confidence in where I put people on my board, Maxwell. Appreciate that.
It's
Um,
not you. It's like everybody. Like I feel like
yeah.
everybody had him draftable.
Well, I'll put it to you like this, man. I think that the reports that I've been seeing all off season, they even mentioned it in the broadcast for the Maui game that really didn't mean anything in terms of on the court repercussions. Obviously, it was a great event. I wore
Yep.
my Hawaiian shirt, just kind of, show solidarity there. But the shot looks like it has been reconstructed. And he was getting all sorts of buckets against a very talented Illinois team. Very strong, very athletic, 82nd percentile in cutting, uh, can impact the offensive side of the ball without having the ball in his hands. But he gets involved in setting screens. He flashes to the basket well. He's not afraid to mix it up on the glass. He's got good connective passing instincts. Again, very good rebounder, which again is a very good NBA indicator. A good steal and block rate defensively. Like this guy is what's the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
essentially how McCullough plays basketball. I mean, good steal, good block rate, and again, 30% of 3-point shooting last year. I think that's literally the only thing holding him back. And Maxwell, it feels like we always have a sprinkling of these guys in every draft class. Whereas if he could just add the shot,
Mhm.
he will be all right. And I think that is Kevin McCullough personified because literally everything else, I think that he's got the intangible aspects to his game that every NBA team is going to want. He's a winner. He's competitive. He's a great teammate. He's always building his guys up. He's a very active communicator on the court. He doesn't shy away from big moments. He is a very accountable player. So you mix all the things together, the intangibles, the toughness to his game, the willingness to do all the dirty work. Again, the shot mechanics look like they have cleaned up, especially in that Illinois game, and he is hitting. So, Maxwell, I'm just going to ask you, you're low on him. I have an early second round grade on him, and I will put out right now, he's susceptible to falling back a little bit.
Mhm.
But just the shot that is holding you back on it, and that's a very big thing for
Yeah.
his position now, but is it
Mhm.
just the shot kinda holding you back?
It is. So I agree with a lot of what you said about what he does well. Like I think from just a competitiveness standpoint, like there's no doubting him. I also think like one thing that I do want to give him credit for is he moved so much better last season. Like I know he had a
Yeah,
lot of injuries that year at Texas Tech before this. And like every game, the commentators were like, his shoulder has been dislocated 25 times and like his knees are broken. Like every game, it was like kind of like Jaime Jaquez that junior year at UCLA, where it sounded like he was just being held together by glue and tape. But
or Mick
last year you
Foley
could
for you
see
wrestling fans out
it.
there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So last year he looked just so much better from a movement perspective. And where it really showed up was his rim finishing. Like he was really good at the rim last
Yeah,
season. And before that, like you could just tell you no spring. Like I was very impressed with what he did defensively last season. Because of his kind of bulk and strength, he's able to guard up a little bit, really good on smaller players, great tracking the ball. I agree with the passing juice. Like he's got some really good secondary initiating kind of stuff to him. I just worry a ton about the shot because it feels like every year it's like, oh, the shot's getting better, and then it doesn't happen.
yeah,
So we are now through 4 years of college.
yeah.
Per 100 possessions, he takes like 5, which is, like a little below moderate volume, 29.8%.
Very humble amount of
Um,
three-point shot.
my big concern is like, would you say he's probably like a forward at the next level? Or do you consider him more of like a 2-3 at the next level?
I think he's a solid 3.
Okay.
I think he could flex depending on the matchup. I wouldn't
Yeah.
rule him out as a 2 or a 4 at the next level.
Okay.
I think he's kind of like a flex 3.
So the guys who he was like 30.4% on catch and shoot threes last year. So I'm like, sorry, like I did so much work on my data yesterday that I'm like, I'm keep going back to the sheets. But a lot of guys that shot in that range or worse off the catch just have physical tools that he doesn't have. Like they're guys
Okay.
like Najee Marshall or Scotty Barnes or like Lamar Stevens, who's as big of a house, like Delano
Yeah.
Banton, who like is taller and had more playmaking juice and like maybe not as quick or defensively well rounded, but like has a lot of stuff. Or like Isaac Okoro, who's like better defender, stronger, more athletic. Derek Jones, like the guys that shoot in that range off the catch that stick, I feel like are just more athletic and like bigger
Yeah.
than McCullough is. And that's kind of my concern with him. It's just like it's got to be better. Like the jump shot has to be better. And I'm at a point now with like his graduate season where guys like him, guys like Terrence Shannon that have kind of been on the cusp for a long time and are now graduates, I'm kind of just like, I, would I be better off like not even signing them to a two-way, but finding like somebody else in the G League that was solid and getting them on a two-way instead? That it's at least
Mm.
can do something at a professional level versus the guy that I'm waiting on to improve something in college for like the fourth, fifth year in a row. Like I, I'm just not there with McCullough. I'm open to being wrong because, like you said, like everyone said the shot looked great, and I haven't seen that exhibition game, but people like he made the shots obviously, but people said the guy just looked better. So if he does shoot, like yeah, that's a solid second round guy for me. But I think I'm just lower on how the rest of it translates to the next level. Um, let's go to
And
another.
if I could just
Oh,
could
yeah.
I just add just real quick? Um, we're on opposite ends of how we're coming into the season on him.
Mm-hmm,
And I feel like I'm decently high. I'm not
mm-hmm.
like obscenely high or like willing to just like throw logic out the window. And I still have him in the second round. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like I think that that is kind of noteworthy thing just to kind of point out where like I'm looking at it like glass half full. You're a little bit more reserved in how you feel about
Mm-hmm.
him coming into the year. And then out of the two of us, I'm more high on him and I still look at him as like an early second round guy. So
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot to be said about that being kind of like the at the middle of our conversation here.
Just like a fun hypothetical. Let's say the volume on the three stays the same, but it looks better mechanically. He shoots 40% from three.
Oh man, it's over.
Where do you take him?
I would
Because then, like, he's
obviously,
probably like a playoff rotation. Like, I know that the sample size of like one season is still kind of
yeah.
scary, But it's like at that point, then are we getting like a Christian Brown thing where it's like, oh yeah, that's the guy that's like ready to play playoff minutes.
Well, how about Kobe Brown, who's getting minutes already for the Clippers early on in the
Yeah,
season, who was the guy that you wrote about last year who took that
took that big
senior
shooting leap at like
that
23 years old. Yeah,
exactly,
which I
yeah,
was
and
very leery of, and I'm now just kind of like, well, the volume was higher. Like maybe it's not just that.
I wouldn't be opposed to, I had Jaime Jaquez later than I probably should have, but, I'd
Mhm.
probably say similarly, like, to that, like, 23 to 30
Yeah,
window, like, somewhere in there, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but
mhm.
obviously, it would depend on how everybody else is performing as
For
well.
sure. Yeah, it's yeah. Just I just
Yeah,
think
obvious
that
caveat.
that'd be very fun. Yeah, just hypothetical. So
Yeah,
let's go to a guy who's sort of on the opposite side of this, right? Like a guy who is kind of proven, like Kevin McCullough is like proven to be really good at stuff. This next
yep,
guy is like proven in a very limited capacity at the college level, but a very exciting player. Terrence Arsenault at
mm,
Houston, 6'6", 205. A guy I was very high on coming into
yep,
last season. He was the guy that was like preseason top 20 for me. Just didn't really kind of get a big role on a Houston team that was really good. He still showed some stuff defensively. He was really impressive. Like, I know defensive numbers on Synergy aren't perfect, but like go to his defensive percentiles, they're all like 96th, 95th, 99th. Like
pretty good.
that dude can defend. Posted a 2.9 steal rate, 1.4 block rate. And I think what stood out to me most on defense is like he's just so imposing. Like he is so big and so long and just smothers people. Like he knows what to take away from guys. Like he knows where you don't want to go on the scouting report. Um, he's pretty strong and he's gonna get up on you. I thought something that like was interesting to me is like I don't even think his feet are very good
Mm,
defensively. Like I was stunned how many times his feet crossed on like isolation possessions and stuff like that. And opponents scored 5 points on 16 isolation possessions against him. Like it's just a lot of like tools and caring that he can impose on you, and you're not going to score, and that's that. Um, he was great there. Like that's like the big thing, right? Offensively, he struggled a lot.
yeah,
He scored 16 points per 100 possessions, which was 3.7 per game in the 14 minutes a game that he played. He was a poor outside shooter. He was 25% from three, 52% at the free throw line. In his final EYBL season in high school, he shot almost 40% from three. So he has in the past like shot. And that was part of why I was buying it was like, well, he's athletic, he can really shoot, and he can really defend. The shot wasn't there. And I'm going to throw this up on the screen here from Dirty Dancer. Arsenal's handle still looks rough. Yeah. That guy, it's kind of Alex Fudge vibes, like when he's got to put it on the deck. Like he looks just really uncomfortable having to do anything besides catch and shoot offensively. So we need a really serious offensive leap here. Like I love what he does defensively, and I think he might be one of those guys where the defense is so good and the physical tools are so good that he might still be able to find a way to make it work, even if he's not the best shooter in the world or has some pretty severe offensive limitations. But if we're going to be talking about him as like a first round guy, there's got to be like a real serious jump on offense that we don't typically see, which makes me wonder if we're just getting a little too excited with the idea of him as a this year guy versus like, let's just kind of see where it goes. So I like Arsenal a lot. He's still a guy I'm very intrigued with long term. I I love the defense so much that I think I ended up still ranking him pretty high, but I do want to bet on him, and I probably would if we had to do the draft right now. Um, I had him 39. I thought I might have had him the first, but yeah, I'm leery. Where are you at with Arsenal?
I'm leery-er,
Okay,
if
that's
that's a
fair. Yeah,
word. Yeah, dude, he was a highly thought of prospect, and it wasn't just here. I believe what Sam Vecini was also a big Arsenal guy,
yeah.
coming into last year too, right? Like very smart people like him, but this dude just cannot string consistent offensive play together at all. I mean, in transition, Maxwell, he was in the 30th percentile. in
which
transition,
like, and
and
we're
this
talking about a really plus athlete. Like,
exactly.
it's scary.
He's 30th percentile in transition, 29th in spot ups, 40 or I'm sorry. I have my notes swapped around here, but like his highest grade in any offensive skill set was in the 49th percentile, right? Like
Oh.
that's his high, like the thing that he did best was in the 49th percentile. That offensive feel is just so low to me, man. Like
Mhm.
it's not just the dribbling, it's like it's the whole dribble pass shoot aspect of it, right? And
It's the playing
I can't
offense side of offense
it's the
that needs to
whole
come
it's the
along.
whole
Yeah.
it's the whole either you putting the ball in the hoop or you
Mhm.
getting the ball to somebody else to put the ball in the hoop that needs to improve. And I just can't help but think about the guy that we just got done talking about and Kevin
Yeah.
McCullough, who
Yeah.
who is a better shooter, but
Mhm.
passes, dribbles, cuts, like does all these things on the offensive side, and is still a really good defender. Now, I will say that Arsenal, I think, has the physical tools to be pretty daggum good at the defensive side of
Yeah.
things, but I mean, he was a net neutral assist to turnover ratio guy, which I mean is better than being in the negative. The
Mhm.
shot just feels a ways away for me, man. But I am with you on the defensive side of things. I do think that he is a very good defender, but Houston's bringing in like more freshmen now, and
That's
and
where it
they're
gets
they're
tricky.
they're getting transfers in now, and they have guys that they have trusted in their system still on this team. So it's like, how does he even get the opportunity to show that he is making these improvements? I mean, are you playing him against JoJo Tugler? I mean, that dude's getting a lot of buzz right now,
That's the
man.
thing,
Like
is like Tugler, yeah, Tugler
we
is
might have
very,
messed up
very
not talking about him in the top freshman. Like
yeah.
he's looking good, man. But
He's so good and so big, and like, even if you're talking about him, like, because like this is again a shorter Houston team. Like, they've got the tallest guy on the roster is Jacob McFarland, who's 6'10".
yeah,
I saw Jacob McFarland at Under Armour. I like him a lot, like longer term. Very raw, like very big
yeah,
pogo stick kind of guy, but real thin, like not a lot of offensive stuff to him. Um, Guys like Tugler and like even like Javier Francis was like just
yeah.
so nasty, and like same with Juwan Roberts, that it's like you've got those three guys that I think are gonna like play. Like, because Tugler's got
Mhm.
like that, what is like a 7'5" wingspan at six
He's
seven or something. Like,
ridiculous.
it's stupid. Like, just like one of those guys that it's like if someone made that player in 2K, you'd be furious. Like, you'd be like,
Of
no,
course.
there can't be a guy with arms that long. Like, it's insane. And he really knows what he's doing out there on defense. Again, a guy who's kind of offensively raw, but um, so then, okay, so it's like, okay, well, then he's playing like the guard and wing minutes. It's like, okay, well, you got Jamal Shed, who's, proven himself time and again for this Houston team. You've got LJ Cryer, who's long been one of the best scorers in the Big 12. You've got
Yep.
Damian Dunn, who really filled it up
Love him,
at,
by the way.
at Temple. And then yeah, me too. And like all of a sudden you're in a situation where it's like, is he the seventh man on this team? Like,
That's what I'm
is
saying.
that realistic? Like, he might get kind of squeezed. Like, he's gonna get to play, but there's a chance that like he's not a very big priority for this team if the offense isn't there, because between Shed, Cryer, Dunn, like, you're getting plenty of offense there. You're gonna get the cleanup stuff from Roberts and Francis. Maybe if the shot is going for Arsenault, he gets those minutes as like kind of a floor spacer guy. But yeah, I don't think it's like a sure thing that he is getting a huge role on this team. And that's scary. Like, I will once again say I am very interested in him as a
Yeah.
long-term prospect, but given the offensive limitations, like, it just feels like there's a lot that has to go right. Like, when I see him mocked in the first round places. And like,
And
if
that's
he's
and that's
solid this
my
year, like,
thing.
I still might be willing to bet on him there, but like we said, again, depending on how all of it shakes out, but he's gonna have to take a pretty serious offensive leap.
And that's my thing is like I have him 58th on my board right now, which is still draftable because thanks to reasons that punishment exists in the NBA for tampering, we just like take opportunities away from people trying to make it into the NBA. Still going to be
Mhm.
drafted on my board as of today. But what's the likelihood that he makes? Like we're talking about a complete offensive overhaul in one offseason,
Yeah.
Maxwell. Like that's
I don't because I don't think it needs to be that. Like, I literally think he can just shoot, and I'm really interested on one of those like 4-year second round deals. Like, if
okay.
he shoots, I would love him on like a Jordan Walsh contract where it's like the 4-year guarantee. Like, because at that point, we're talking about a guy with like plus physical tools, really great defense. And then, if the shot's there, well, then maybe we just throw him in the G League and we see what we can get out of the rest of his skill development a year or two from now. Like I
Okay.
would love that. So I really only need the shot to buy in, I think. But even then, like it's still, a little more projecty than you might like.
Just yeah, we're just opposite ends of where we view him at,
Yeah.
which what makes our show awesome, dude. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
we just went from having opposite views on McCullough to Arsenault, but I'm sure
Yeah.
we're gonna agree with this next guy. I'm sure we're gonna be hand
I
hand in
I
hand here.
think we both like this next guy quite a bit.
Yeah.
Dylan Jones. Okay. I really considered first round grade on Dylan Jones. And
Yeah.
depending on the team, I'd probably take him in the first. Like if I'm a contender and I'm in the first, I'm probably picking him over a lot of those guys I have in the back half of the first. So Dylan Jones, 6'6", 235 out of Weber State. He is, I believe, going into his senior year this season. Yep. Yeah. He is a guy that I covered for No Stone Unturned like a year ago, and then I like stupidly slept on him the entire next season. I was like, "Oh, the shot's not going in," and then like goes to the combine and tears it up, and I felt like a big dummy for not hyping him up more after I covered him early. But he is a really stellar player, and I think what took me
Yeah.
by surprise was he came to the combine in stellar shape. Like he came to
Mhm.
the combine looking lean, looking fast, was making plays on the ball defensively. That like he had really good steal rates at Weber State, but it was a lot of just like he's smarter than everybody on the floor. He's figuring stuff out. Where at the combine, it was like, oh, he outquicked a guy and got to the ball. Like it was different. Um, he is a very, very productive player. So Dylan Jones last year,
Yes.
16.7 points, almost 11 rebounds per game, almost 4 assists and 1.6 steals. One of the best rebounders in the country, like just really throws his body on guys and makes stuff happen on the glass. Um, I love his feel as a passer. Like we mentioned, like almost 4 assists a game. Very good at changing speeds, playing low with the ball, having a good handle, having counters, using his strength to his advantage when he has a strength advantage. Very clever in terms of just finding unique passing angles. A lot to like about his game. The shot's a little confusing. I think I buy it ultimately because we're now 2 years in a row of over 80% at the free throw line. He just doesn't get clean looks. Like, just doesn't get open off the catch threes because when teams play Weber State, they're just pressing up on him the entire game. So I think that makes life a little bit difficult for him. He's been a low blunks guy, the blocks plus dunks that you phrase that you coined a year ago.
I love that
He's
you brought that back.
got to bring up blunks. He's been a low blunk guy, but here's the thing: we mentioned the shape he got into in the combine. He still looks like that. Like the pictures that have come out of the Weber State workouts, he still looks like that dude. So if he's blocking shots and he's finishing above the rim, like that is unquestionably a first round guy to me. Um,
Yeah.
my question basically is just like, what is he going to look like defensively? And where does his motor settle to? Because that was something that was like, I think
Mm.
it was part of the body issue is like he'd been, for lack of a better term, just kind of a heavy player the last few years. He had a lot of extra weight on him. And because of that, like there'd be times where he just wasn't running up and down the court. It was kind of slow to get back on defense. Now that he's in shape, I think if he can play with a high motor consistently and show a little bit more as a shot blocker, as an above the rim player, um, given his feel and just how much he does on the court, I would have a really hard time letting him fall out of the first round.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be completely honest, I have him in the back half of my second round.
Okay.
I think that the offensive, like, complementary stuff, right? Like,
Hmm.
specifically the
That's
floor
very
space.
fair. Hmm.
I think, like, the complementary offensive game has to be there because what really fascinates a lot of people is how much of an offensive motor, like, this guy is for his team, right? Like,
Hmm.
he does everything, but what's it like when he doesn't have the ball so much,
Yeah.
and we haven't had to worry about that, we look at the Weber State commitment and everything that he's doing there. I think that that's fantastic that he's showing loyalty. There's a lot of great qualities that you can kind of derive from that decision. The only question that I have, Maxwell, is like, what does it look like when he's not the number one guy on a
Mhm.
team, right? I mean, because we know what it looks like now. He's 17, 11, and 5 guy shooting 46, 30, and 81. Very good rebounder and passer. Great understanding of knowing how to put the defensive tough spots. Like he can leverage his passing for his scoring for his passing. High free throw rate guy, like just
Yeah.
relentlessly puts pressure on the defense all the time. Has good size and a strong frame. Decent steal numbers. I think that he's more comfortable in the paint defensively than he is at open space. So that kind of like questions me a little bit of in terms of like the 3 and D quality to his game. Is like, is he defending guards? Is he defending wings? Is he defending forwards? I think depending on who he's matched up against, you're probably gonna have quite different results, right? Um, another recent example though, Maxwell, of a guy who can do everything but shoot, right? Like he reminds me a lot of
Mhm.
what Jalen Slauson was like last year, right? Because
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
kind of the same thing for Furman last year, right? He's undoubtedly a smart player, man. But like, do you think that his weaknesses kind of overshadow the things that he does well, or do you think that he
Yeah.
can kind of like spike them a little bit?
I think he can do it. Like, and maybe I'm putting way too much stock into a combine performance, but I think between like the measurements, how
Yeah,
much quicker he looked, and then how the shot looked there, I'm willing to buy that like this is the opposite of like the Kobe Johnson problem, right? Where it's like, okay, well he does really good at the few things he gets to do. So like, can you do that at the next level? Where this is like, can you scale it back? And I would much rather take that kind of bet generally.
yeah,
Um, I do think he can. I think he's sharp enough to figure that stuff out. I think who he guards is a fair question. I think he's probably going to guard like twos and threes, which is kind of crazy
mm,
because it's so much
yeah.
different than what he does now. But and it's going to be different than who he guards in that conference. Just it's smaller league. Like he's going to be playing teams where like a lot of teams have a 6'6" power forward. I Yeah, I think that's a fair concern though, especially if like the three ball isn't falling, and it's gonna be tough because like we said, like he's not gonna get a lot of open looks. But I think the biggest thing he can do is just hit threes this year. Like if he just hits
Yeah.
his threes, like it's gonna be really easy to buy in. And if he does that and he's in shape and he's moving, he's good to go. But yeah, I think the what does it look like in a reduced role thing is a real question for him.
So I got two things just before I'm done on the Dylan
Mhm.
Jones conversation. One, the best role players in the NBA were the stars on their team, right, in
Yep.
college. So Dylan Jones obviously has that going for him, right? But it's kind of the player type that is very fun to watch and like very captivating. I mean, Vince Williams Jr. was like the apple of my
Yeah.
eye for VCU. And again, I was a big Jalen Slauson guy too.
Mm.
These kind of like guys who were probably better off being NBA fours, in my opinion, based on what they bring to the table, who are a little bit undersized, who aren't the most reliable shooters, and kind of rely on being able to just do all these great things with the ball, like translating up. It's not really hitting at a rate that I think that we would like to see. And I really do hope though that Dylan Jones can kind of buck that trend because he's just so much fun to watch, man. And I do love how much fire he plays with, how competitive he is.
Hmm. For sure. So we're gonna do one more break. Then we're gonna go to a guy I'm obscenely high on, and some just
Sure.
kind of interesting guys, some sleepers, and we'll get to it. So we're gonna come back on the other side of the break. We will be right back. All right, let's talk about Dalton Connect. I've talked about Dalton Connect.
Who I don't think that we've mentioned
Yeah.
him at
So
all.
I've spent a lot of time on him. I've not shut up about Dalton Connect since I watched him this summer. A lot for my No Stone Unturned series and wrote about him then. 6'6", 213 pounds, gonna be a graduate at Tennessee. Scored 28 points in an exhibition game against Michigan State, had a dunk that went all over the place. Here's the thing with Dalton Connect. He was like a 39% three-point shooter last year. Really good off the dribble, really good off the catch. Met a like dunks and threes threshold where it was like him, Ochai, and Mikal Bridges.
Yep.
Those kind of guys that are that athletic, that have that kind of shooting touch, I just don't think fail. I understand like the defensive making metrics were not good. To me, on that end, I don't think he's bad. I think he just like didn't really play that hard. He's not a guy who falls asleep off the ball. He doesn't like play poorly at the point of attack or let himself get beat. I think he just kind of coasted on that side of the floor, for lack of a better term. I don't think it's a negative. Um, Given the profile is like an unreal athlete, a guy who also just had a late growth spurt, like was 5'4" as a freshman in high school and didn't become 6'6" until his freshman year of college. I buy the late bloomers. I buy a guy who's a 3-level scorer. Like he has, like I mentioned, Ochai
Yep.
Agbaji. Like Dalton Connect might not finish at the rim like Ochai. He might not be the defender that Ochai was, but he's got a bag that Ochai didn't have. He can really do stuff in the mid range. Can really like put it on the floor and beat guys. He blew by guys like Dylan Jones and Grant Nelson, like high level athletes last year to get to the rim and dunk. Between what he does in the half court as a scorer, a shooter, the athleticism, these guys don't fail. I have him 20th on my board. I think he is
Mm.
like 100% a guy who is going to contribute on good NBA teams. So that's my Dalton Connect piece. Where are you at with Connect?
So I'm gonna go ahead and say the part that you're gonna hate the most. I have him 42nd on my board.
Sickening.
Yeah, it's
I know I'm way high on him. So
but I really like him. Like I am not ruling out a first round result in him at
mhm.
all. He's very good size and he is an athlete. Can we not do the whole he's white sneaky athlete thing? Like he
No,
is
he's just an athlete, dude. I'm
he
with
is
you.
just a he is just an athlete. You talked about him being like a 38, 39 three-point shooter last year while having 26 dunks on the year. That's remarkable. What's the three-point dunk? Is that Thrunks or is that going to be the one that we do
Yeah,
this year?
he's a Thrunks guy, big time Thrunks
He's a
guy,
big Thrunks guy.
I was
Yeah.
too. Like I did the film, like a lot of film work on him. So many of those were in the half court. Like
Yeah.
very few were actually in transition. These were him beating guys off the dribble and doing it in traffic.
Yeah, and he looked great. You mentioned the Michigan State game, like he looked great there. And I just say I love the decision to go to Tennessee because if you look at the different sets that they run for like a guy like Santiago Vescovi, or even the kind of bully ball aspect of Josiah Jordan James, I think that Don't Connect can thrive in a bunch of different like already instilled Tennessee play types that they run all the time there. I love that decision. I think it's a perfect marriage there. I do like the complementary playmaking that he has. Another good rebounder, a very high rebound guy. Defense looks like it's going to be neutral at best, but we're talking about a really capable shooter with complementary shooting. I mean, I'm passing and handle on top of the shooting, and can do some away from the ball work as well. Again, 42nd on my board, very, very capable of moving up. There are just several wings in this class that have similar size and very skilled in a lot of different regards. And I think that that's going to be the fun of this draft class, Maxwell, is kind of going through all these guys with size this year and kind of tearing them off a little bit. And I wouldn't rule out Dalton kind of being a quick riser on my board.
No, I think that's completely reasonable. Let's kind of roll right into the next guy if you're cool with it, because he's somebody that I think is sort of in a similar place. That's Alex Caravan at UConn, who's another one of these guys where I feel like I go back and forth on him. Where like sometimes I'm like, oh, mid second, and sometimes I'm a little hung up on some of the stuff he doesn't have. So Alex Caravan was part of the national championship team at UConn. He's going to be back for his sophomore season. He is older. I believe he had a redshirt year in there and like was kind of older for his class in general before that.
Yeah.
So I believe he's gonna be like 21 or so around draft time. 6'8", 220 pounds, high skill, high feel, and tall, which is generally just like a safe bet.
Yep.
47.6% from the field, 40.2% from three, 80.9% from the free throw line last year. Last year, there were 4 freshmen in the country that posted like shooting splits in that vicinity. It was Alex Caravan, it was Cade Tyson at Belmont, Grady Dick, and Bryce Sensabaugh. So like one of the most efficient guys in
I
the
like
country,
all those guys.
high
Yeah.
major freshmen. So really good at filling it up at every level. Sneaky offensive glass guy, like really good at just being like, oh, there's not a body there. I'm going to go in. I'm going to grab that one and put it right back. Has a little bit of movement shooting to him. He's not fast, so he's not going to be a guy that like you run off a million screens. But if he's setting an action, if he's setting a pick, if he's coming off of something, if he's flaring, he's gonna be able to set his feet. I love his shot prep footwork and get that sucker off clean. Um, I do wonder if he's able to scale up because like a sharp passer too can like put it on the floor a little bit. Um, it's kind of the Kobe Johnson question again, right? Where it's just like, okay, well, how much more is this? Like, is he just really good
Yeah.
at playing this role? And if he is, can he do this role at the next level? Or like when the athleticism has to be a bigger part of his game, when he has to create a little bit more for himself, like, is he able to do any of that? And if not, is there enough on the other side of the ball that he can stay afloat while being really good at the stuff that he does? I think the defense is pretty solid. I actually think I underrated him on my most recent board that I submitted, which I hate to say, but him and another guy we're going to talk about are two guys who are just like, I think I sagged on that guy a little too much. I think he knows how to defend within a team construct. I think he did okay against smaller players. He's not going to like get up and swat guys or be like a
Yeah.
big weak side rim protection guy. The steal rate's always going to be kind of low, just because like he's not going to be a guy that darts into passing lanes or anything like that. I think he can stay afloat on that end. I just have a question about like, does the offense scale up when he's not like? I know the shot went into the high clip, but it's just like how much versatility is there to how he gets to his 3-point shots, or is he a guy that just kind of eats off of what everybody else cooks?
I think that that's totally fair. It's not so much that you can be a three-point shooter in the NBA, Maxwell. It's like how versatile are you within that three-point shot? Are you solely a guy that has to be set up? Can you put the ball on the ground for, a sidestep or, kind of an evasive dribble and then get back up into your shot? Are you capable of running off screens? There's that whole aspect. And then there's the what elseness that you bring to your game. But I'm a fan of Caravan, dude. Like I have him 43rd on my board. I know that might not scream me being a fan,
Mhm.
but I do like his game. A knockdown shooter that played with a ton of poise on a championship team as a freshman last year, has the length and shooting consistency to be on an NBA team. I wholeheartedly feel that. Like 6'8" and can shoot the way that he does. That is going to be incredibly valuable to a lot of teams. You can get real creative with a guy his size at that length. Would like to see him grow as a passer and a rebounder this season. Although he did okay in those areas last year, it's not like he was a zero or a dud in those
No, not at
areas. I would just like to see him grow in that area, get a little bit more this year with him coming back. Would like to see him use his size to improve a little bit on the interior. Doesn't get to the free throw line much. Could improve with some more development. I think that he's just going to be a guy that makes life simpler for a guy like Stephon Castle or Adana McClingan. Like when you got guys on this team like UConn does with Calcaterra, with Springer and Caravan, and then you're running that pick and roll with Castle and Klingon, it's going to be pretty nasty. It's going to be scary hours for the UConn Huskies. I just think that with the moments that he has in team defense where he looks okay, like you mentioned, being held afloat. Worry about his movement. I do worry about his movement to defend on an
Mhm.
island, despite the tools that he has with a decent block rate. I just mid-second round pick on a guy like him. I know he's like close to that like 21 age, so he's almost admitted into being in an elderly home. But like I do still think that he has stuff to offer the earth on an NBA basketball team. And I think that a team with multiple seconds, you could do well to add a 6'8" floor spacer on your
Yeah.
team. And I think that he could definitely be that guy.
Yeah, I think where it's gonna be tricky is like, yeah, he's gonna need to show more on a team where I don't know that he's gonna get it because like, we mentioned when we talked about Stephon Kess, like the differences between him and Andre Jackson, but like he's gonna have the ball a lot. Tristan Newton's gonna have the ball a lot. They've got Cam Spencer coming over from Rutgers,
Yep,
like he's gonna have the ball a decent amount. So then, like, if Caravan doesn't get on the ball more, like he really can't afford any regression from the 3-point
that's
line. Like
true.
he's got to
Yeah.
be like above, like in that like 38 and up range, and like kind of show stuff on defense. So I think there's worlds where like, maybe he's still another year or two away. And if he is, that's fine. Like he'll be an older prospect when he comes out, but if that happens, but I think he's a really interesting case study because if there is like that step forward, because UConn just was so talented last year, like maybe there is more that we just didn't get to see. And if that's the case, then It's going to be tough to pass on a high field guy that shoots like that. That's that big. Let's go to Reese Beekman. Beekman is another guy where I felt like I was maybe a little lower than a lot of people among our crew. So I like Reese Beekman as like a two-way guy. I don't know that I want to like draft him.
Yeah.
I know that might be a little harsh, but 6'3", around 194, going back for a senior year at Virginia. Obviously, he's an outstanding defensive player. Was writing my piece for, well, it's going to be today by the time you're listening to this, in kind of previewing a lot of the big games this week and games that should be watched. And one thing that came up on Reese that was crazy to me was that opponents turned it over 33.7% of the time in pick and roll
Yep.
against him. Like, really, really good at just forcing people to make mistakes. Career steal and block rate, a steal rate of 3.5, block rate of 2.1. Like, that is Jalen Suggs, like Davion Mitchell kind of territory on those two numbers. So, like, obviously a very good defensive player, super cerebral as a passer. And like that dazzled at the combine too. Like, he is a very sharp passer, really good at finding those windows, really good at the pocket passing. 5.2 assists to 1.5 turnovers last year. Where it gets tricky is there like enough offensive complementary juice? So he was a 35% 3-point shooter last year, but the volume was really low. And that's kind of toward the higher end. I believe he struggled with some injuries last year, but he's still really below the rim inside the arc, and he's not that fast. So where a guy like an Alex Caruso or a Damian or D'Anthony Melton or like some of these like defense guards make their
Yep.
mint, like I just don't think he has the athletic juice that those
Yeah.
guys do. And I think without that, I don't know that like I'm enamored enough with the rest of the game. I know he's like a really sharp player, but if he's not like a 38% 3-point shooter on decent volume, I'm just not like tripping over myself to get that guy when I have that question about that type of player.
Yeah, he's 50th on my board right now. Wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised if he moved in either direction, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
he could climb, but he could certainly drop out as well. You know, he's a high IQ player, knows how to generate points from good defense, had 11 dunks on the year. That's higher than several players, Maxwell, that we've
Higher than
actually
you would think.
talked
Yeah.
about. Yeah, higher than some of the players that we've talked about today, right? And that being at, he might be 6'3". You know, I love the passing instincts, although the bag on the types of passes that he kind of hits just aren't top tier if that matters at all to you for a guard. Moves his feet well on defense, can be irritating in the passing lanes for any offense that he's lined up against. Pretty good block rate too. Again, he's just an incredible defender. Bag though is not very advanced for a lead guard. He's a good athlete, but not one of these like omnidirectional water bugs. Rebounding numbers, yes, even for a guard, they weren't great last year. So another good athletic indicator too. 40% from the field, 35% from deep last year, which was a career high, by the way. So you're talking
Mhm.
about a guy
Yeah.
who has improved each year, but even at his best so far, around 35% from the college 3-point line
On low volume too.
on
So
low volume. Yeah. So insert more undersized guard concerns here. You know, you
mhm.
got the ball skill, you got the athleticism, and you got the shooting. I just don't know how you survive in today's NBA at 6'3" when those are your biggest concerns coming in.
Mhm.
I just don't.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But then at a certain point, like you said, like you had him like 50, like I've got him like 62 or something like that. Like at a certain point, like it's just kind of worth the stab, right? Like if he's so
Yeah.
good at defense and such a high field passer, like maybe you just bank on, hey, hopefully a year from now we get the shot where we want it. So
Yeah, Jacob Gilliard is still getting burned in the NBA, and like
that's
I
the
don't mean
thing.
that
Like,
as like a diss. Like
yeah.
he's so good defensively that teams are willing to put him in. You know.
And even um like Trey Jones, like kind of had similar questions. I think Trey's a better athlete,
Yeah.
but like same thing. Like if you can be really good at defense. And like if you can just figure out the shot enough, and Trey Jones scored like 16 points per game, where Reese is scoring like 9. So like we said, that juice has to come along. But I don't think it's like unreasonable for him to get to a point where
Not at all.
he's seeing, a long-term NBA career. Let's get into kind of deep cut sicko territory with these last two. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you take the lead on this one because this was your guy. Guillermo Diaz-Graham, 7 feet tall, 220, going to be a sophomore at Pittsburgh. Let's give people the rundown on him because I think a lot of people might not be familiar.
Yeah, so he's just awesome. Like that's where that's where I would start. He's probably one of the best, maybe worst kept secrets now in basketball. He's probably not a secret anymore as much as like myself, Corey, and Evan been hyping him up all throughout the preseason. He's also got a twin brother, Jorge, who's also pretty talented cat as well. I think that Evan is more in the camp of hyping up Jorge because I think Corey and I kind of got it covered for the Guillermo conversation. But there's just there's just so much to like about him, man. First off, he's got the skill at his size that is similar to that of a Chet Holmgren and Evan Mobley, other malleable bigs of that ilk. I know that that's like kind of blasphemy for a lot of people to hear, but watch the film, man, because I mean you're looking at
Mhm.
a pretty fluid dude. I just shout out Atcast. I love the way he moves. Definitely skinny, but the reports is that he has added about 20 pounds of muscle. He and his brother both adding 20 pounds in the offseason. That is nice. That is what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Uh, Good ball tracking defensively, has good passing feel, can shoot. Can you see where I'm coming with the Chet Holmgren, kind of niceties to his game? Could be the player this year, Maxwell, that I think could really wreck some boards. Like he and his brother both, I think could really wreck some draft boards coming through the year. I'm trying to be conservative and trying not to just be like, this guy is Chet Holmgren, so therefore I
Mhm.
have to put
Yeah,
him
yeah.
this high. I don't think that he is, but they're again not just play style, but even physically, like watching them move on the court. There's some kind of Chet like going on there. I have him 48th on my board.
Oof, okay.
I think that Corey has him like even higher than that, and I
Mhm.
respect him for going with his gut a little. He's more brave than me right now. Don't be surprised if this guy comes screaming up boards this year
Yeah.
because he has what NBA teams want, and for whatever reason, like he's not discussed a lot.
So I see the vision. He is similar to Zach Austin on the same team, a watch list guy for me. Pittsburgh is like a sneaky, you gotta watch him
Yup.
team this year because they've got him. They've obviously got Jorge. They've got Zach Austin, who's like transferred from High Point, who like was crazy productive. I like Federico too, who's like their other big man. Like they've got guys. Blake
Mhm.
Hinson, who like, by the way, insane career. Like
Barnes
plays 2 years
Jr.
at Ole
Yeah.
Miss. Yeah, double redshirt years at Iowa State, transfers to Pitt, and was great last year. This is a really talented Pitt team. Like Pitt is going to be good, and if you're interested in the NBA draft, like a team I'd recommend watching. So with Guillermo, I like his ups. I love his hands. Really good
Yeah.
hands. Like has no problem just snagging the ball with one and really good on the offensive glass. The shot, like percentage wise, wasn't great, but just those guys shoot such a nice, easy ball, like with a quick release that like you kind of think that's going to get better. Um, it's very interesting you mentioned that he filled out his body because that was like my one concern was that like he's got to fill out his body so he can score more efficiently inside. And I think he can be a bit awkward in space. Like I don't
Yeah.
love the movement defensively. I think that's like the big difference between like where I view him versus other people on our crew is I'm a little bit lower on the defensive movement. If he is that much bigger, it might not matter because then it's just like you just play him at the 5. Like if he's listed at like 245, then you just play him at center. Like
Yeah.
if that's what he's working with. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. I wouldn't say I'm like
Yeah.
where some of the guys in our crew are on him, and you and Corey got all 3 guys with good track records and kind of finding these under the radar guys. So I'm definitely interested, but I'm not fully sold at this stage. Just because I want to see the shot match what it looks like, and I want to see just what he is on defense at this point. Like I don't think he's a bad defender. Like I think he knows what he's
Yeah.
doing out there, but I'm just not quite clear on what the NBA role on that side is because I don't love him in space and it just looked like he was a little too easy to move on the inside at the moment. But hey, we'll see.
And you got to uptick in usage stuff too. Like not everything translates in a linear fashion, right? Like where if usage
Mhm.
is going up, efficiency and everything is going to climb. So trust me, there. Like this is why I'm trying to taper like my emotions about having him where I do, and kind of like that mid second round conversation right now. But I'm high in a lot of aspects of his game, but there's reasons to approach it with a more sober and conservative mindset.
For sure. So let's do my sleeper and then we'll get out of here. So my guy I went with was Amari Williams. And this is a guy that I go back and forth on him a lot. And as soon as I submitted my board, I was like, I think I put him too low. I think I've had him like in the 80s. So Amari he's going to be a senior at Drexel. He's 6'10. He's around like 255, 265, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Um, he is NBA big and a freaky good mover for somebody his size. Like unbelievable when guarding down the lineup. Like his feet look like CGI sometimes. Like he can really switch on to smaller players and just make them sweat. Um, there so I just want to read like an episode. I covered him for No Sun Unturned, and like there was just like an excerpt I wanted to share where so first off, he's like the only big man in like the last, I think it was like I searched over like 10 years and there never been anybody that matched his combination of like steal rate, block rate, assist rate, 8.3 block rate, 3.1 steal rate, 20.9% assist rate. It's 6'10". Like can pass, makes a ton of plays on defense, had the best defensive rating in the country last season. So like we're just looking at a guy with NBA size who's an unbelievable defensive player and has passing feel. Like
Yeah.
when I really think about it, it's like, damn, like I want to draft that guy. There are other times where his just offensive efficiency isn't great. And my big hang up with him is just like he settles for a lot of jump shots and like elbow shots and like he runs out of the post a lot. And with that, it's just like, well, it's the same thing I asked about Deron Holmes. Like, is that how you want to play? Or is that how you play because you're on a low major team and the best way to win is just like dump big, strong guy the ball on the block and let him eat alive a much smaller player? Like, there's going to have to be a change to his offensive approach. But I put in the article at the time, like, the phrase that Chuck from Chuck and Dart used all the time is like, when players tell you they're great, like, listen to that. And it's like, well,
Mhm.
what else can this man do on the defensive end before I'm like, you know what, like you just got to take him top 60 because he is so good at one thing. But then again, he's playing at Drexel. Like, but then again, he was good against like all the high major teams they played.
Yeah.
Almost a double against them. I'm talking myself in circles. Where are you at with Amari Williams?
I have him 145th on my board. And Maxwell, like,
Yep.
you know that when you get to a certain point on your board, like the numbers are bigger than the margins would actually otherwise
Yeah,
indicate, if
yeah, yeah,
that makes
yeah. Like
sense,
the
right?
gap
Like
between like 145 and 80 is like minuscule.
it's razor thin, but eventually, like you get to the point where you got to slap a number next to a dude, and it can be reductive at face value, right? A very good rebounder, very good defender, fantastic athlete that puts pressure on the rim. More feel, like you mentioned, than you would otherwise indicate based on just watching him be a nasty basketball player, right? Like you look at like that raw physicality in his game, and then you see these flashes that he's capable of on the offensive end. It's like you would never put those two things together. I think that he could be a bit turnover prone, but I don't know how much of
Just,
that
yeah.
is because he is a big man that is like the fulcrum of the team. So that could be kind of the reasoning behind the output there. The touch is going to be, I think, a big concern for teams, right? So he was 81st percentile at the rim, only 53rd in layups, 75th in dunks. So I think that the touch has to be the thing that gets better, right? Because at a certain point, you can only be so good defensively, and even if you can move the ball a little bit, like, you have to be able to do a little bit on the offensive end, and that's where, like, I have him in this kinda, "Let's wait and see, let's kinda prove it," like, I'm sure you're the same way, Maxwell, like, in that same range, you have a whole bunch of guys that you could easily see
Yeah.
vaulting right up your board into draftable territory, right? So I he's one of these guys that you spoke very highly of, and that put him, like, immediately on my watch list, and I was like, "Okay, like, I like this guy." The whole Drexel thing does play a little bit of a factor in it, but I'm very intrigued, like, to watch him and monitor him because he could much like, this is the reason why they're the sickos or the sleepers to us between, Diaz Graham and Amari Williams. Is like I can see either one of these guys just come screaming up draft boards like super quick throughout this
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, and there were 2 games that I noted on their schedule, like, when I'm doing my sicko schedule organizing, which I talk about in my column this week, was like, they play Temple pretty early in the year, and they play West
Mm.
Virginia, like, in December, and West Virginia has been, like, just a lot of problems, like, with
Well, they got Jesse
unfortunately.
Edwards now, right?
Yeah, I believe they do.
Yeah.
So, like, they've had a lot of, like, weird roster stuff where, like, they're not the team I thought they might be, like, a couple months ago just because of attrition and transfer waivers and all sorts of stuff, but, like, Jesse Edwards and Cook, if he can be healthy, I believe had an event where he collapsed on the court, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But Quinn Selzinski is there. Like, there are guys with size on that team that should give us a real indication as to, like, what does this look like against, like, really good athletes. So
Yeah.
very interested to see him. Um, let's wrap it up here. Just like any rapid fire guys that, like, you've been thinking about lately, or that you're like, oh, kind of like this guy.
Oh man, I mean, so many, so many. Let me pull up my board here. Let's do some bad podcasting.
Yeah,
Um,
PJ Hall is mine. I love
dude, I
PJ
love
Hall.
PJ.
Are you
I
okay? Yeah.
love PJ.
PJ Hall is getting a raw deal. I wrote about it in my column this week. Like, PJ Hall is like same camp as like I feel like Dylan Jones to a degree, and like even like Coleman Hawkins, where it's like had a really good combine, and everyone is just back to being like, all right, see you later. And it's like, wait, no,
Yeah,
no, wait, hold on. That guy was just really good on the court with a bunch of pros. Cliff Amori is another one of those guys too, where
I
it's like,
love
wait a minute, we
Cliff.
just saw this guy like do really well, and like nobody's ranking him. But
I like John I. Broom too. I think that he has
Jai
like a
Broom,
very
yeah,
he could be an NBA
another
pro,
combine
like
guy. Yeah,
another combat guy. Like he could easily be an NBA big, and it's just kind of like out there in the open, and it's like who's I don't think that anybody wants to be the guy that bets on him, but the one that does is gonna be, like, made to be, like, a genius.
he's
How do you
just gonna
feel
be.
about
Yeah, like it feels like he's one of those guys who's like he's gonna be fine, and then it's like, oh, I didn't. Yeah, I don't want to draft a guy who I know is gonna be fine, but then like. Yeah, you're gonna draft somebody who sucks, and
Yeah,
then,
because
and somebody
he
else is gonna
might
get
be
Janai
what John
Broom.
I. Broom actually is.
Yeah, Janai Broom's gonna get signed to an X10 that gets converted to a 2A, and then like get a real contract in the next year.
What do you think about Tafali Leonard was supposed to do all kinds of stuff in
Yes,
school, and now he, if I'm
G
not
League
mistaken, was
draft.
the he was second round pick or second pick overall by
He
the
was.
South Bay Lakers.
Yeah, he went early in that. I'm really interested. I'm really interested to see because like I don't know a lot about Middle Tennessee's like coaching, so like
Yeah.
I know nothing about Middle Tennessee's program, so I don't know like what the development was like there. I'm really interested to see just what a pro program can do for him because he is so athletic and like like I'd heard positive things about like what his shot looked like and things like that, and then he just really didn't shoot it last year, so I was a little
Yeah.
dismayed. And then it was going to transfer, that didn't happen, and a little tumultuous kind of situation there. But I'm really interested in him. Like if he has a good G League year, I'd have no problem slapping a draftable grade on a guy like that just because the physical tools are outrageous.
Yeah, he's in my top 100, and he just like
Mhm.
if a Spider-Man symbiote like played basketball, like I think it would look like Tafali Leonard, man. Like he is just ridiculous, like super elastic, like ultimately is going to come down to the shot like it does with almost every other prospect that we talk about, but man, I just if you talk about a sleeper, this is the ultimate pathway for a sleeper, right? Like
Mhm.
was like a mid-major darling, was supposed to play at a high major school, ends up going to be drafted in the G League by the South Bay Lakers and then just somehow ends up in the NBA. I think that that could be like they could make a movie about that depending on how good
Yeah.
this goes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. Um, let's wrap it up. So, Steven, what have you got in the works this week for NoCeilingsNBA.com?
Yeah, so tomorrow by the time everyone is listening to this on the podcast form, first off, the live comments have been quite awesome. So thank you for everybody who's watching live over on our No Ceilings NBA Draft YouTube channel. So the channel name Maxwell has changed to No Ceilings NBA. So it is no longer No
Oh, my
Ceilings
bad. My bad.
TV.
My bad.
No, it's all good. Like that is a recent development for me as well. So on YouTube, thank you everybody for watching us live. But on the podcast you're listening tomorrow, I'm gonna have, I think it's still early enough to do this, but basically it's like a moves that I liked and moves that I didn't like, and I'm basically picking, a couple handfuls of prospects and saying like, I agreed with your decision to go play for this school. I have questions about you playing for this school. Now, the question aspect doesn't mean that like I'm slamming you for the decision or I don't think that it can work out. It's mainly just saying like it's kind of more muddied than I think that it should be because of the decision you make. And I give a little bit of reasoning as to why. So having a little bit of fun with the season coming back and ultimately gives me an opportunity to watch a week of college basketball now that that is kicked off and really get to dive into some current draft cycle film, which I'm so, so, so psyched about.
It was so cruel too that we got like a taste of G League Ignite, and then it was like, all right, see ya. We'll
Yeah.
see you guys in a
Later,
month or
Tater.
two. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Like, and yeah, it's so frustrating. And like I feel like I get into ruts with guys too, where it's like I'm just watching a bunch of Nikola Topic right now. Like I'm just watching the NPL guys over and over again. It's like it's gonna be nice to like
Yeah.
get like a breather on those guys to an extent too.
I have him in
Um,
my lottery, which is scary. Maybe that is an indication of where we're at in like film
Still
watch. But
scared.
yeah,
Mhm.
he's 14th for me right now. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I think I got him like late 20s. I'm just got the shot. I worry about it. That's another time for another story for another day.
Yeah, yeah.
So college basketball's back, which we've talked about. I got really excited about that. So I wrote about the 10 must scout games this week.
Mm.
This is coming from my perspective. So these are the games that I'm most interested in.
You only pick 10. It's from
I
your
picked 10.
perspective.
I picked 10.
Oh,
Yeah, my
okay.
my schedule is ridiculous. I wrote it out. But yeah, these are the 10 that I'm most excited about, and like looking at the whole matchup. So I like unfortunately UConn doesn't play anybody good. So like UConn didn't have any games to make the list. I'm excited to scout UConn. I'm not super excited to watch them against Stonehill or whoever they're playing. You know what I mean? So
Who's the best player on Stonehill, Maxwell?
I don't know. I wish I had a name for you. I'm going to pull up their Bartorvik right now and to see if there's a guy on Stonehill that I know. They're projected to finish 339th in the country this season.
That's a number.
I do not know any of these players. Yeah.
That is saying
I
a lot. That
I don't know
yeah.
any of them. Like, and not even like occasionally I got looked at school like I almost looked at that guy's film for no Stonehill. I'm
Yeah.
sorry guys. So yeah, 10 games that I'm really looking forward to. I threw some games in there that I feel like I haven't seen a lot of buzz about. Like, for example, I wrote about like Providence versus Milwaukee, which I think is a really interesting game.
Ooh,
Clemson
yeah.
versus UAB. Like, there are some games where it's like, ooh, we're gonna get to see some like fun tests for guys early in the year. So go check that out. That'll be up by the time you're listening. And then yeah, make sure you're tuned in to No Ceilings Plus as well, because I know Tyler Rucker has an
Yeah.
NBA development piece coming out this week. I dropped an extra No Stone Unturned last week, so make sure you're plugged in over there. No Ceilings NBA on YouTube, NoCeilingsNBA.com. Subscribe to the Substack if you want to join No Ceilings Plus. All the better, because you're gonna get bonus content pretty consistently from us over there as well. Anything else we got to plug, Steven? Follow Steven at Steven G Hoops, me at Boundboards.
Yep. Thank you. I believe that we have our boards are going to become available soon, so that's an exciting
Yes.
development.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should be dropping a big board very soon. Check NoSlingsNBA.com when you listen to this because it might be there. I'm not quite sure what the status of that is, but we've all submitted for a
Yeah.
consensus board. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, make sure you're subscribed on all platforms and tell all your friends. Tell all your friends to check out No Ceilings NBA. And so until next time, we'll see you guys later. Peace.
Much love, y'all.